I do not doubt that amongst those women I lived with then, there were those who had suffered, those with sad and terrible memories. But to watch them each day, busily involved with their husbands and children, I found this hard to believe, that their lives had ever held the tragedies and nightmares of wartime. It was never my intention to appear unfriendly, but it was probably true that I made no special effort to seem otherwise. For at that point in my life, I was still wishing to be left alone. It was with interest then that I listened to those women talking of Sachiko. We were to become friends that summer, and for a short time at least, I was to be admitted into her confidence. Thus, we are introduced to the central relationship in A Pale View of Hills. I'm Veronica, and this is the year of Ishiguro at the Reading Chronicles. First, a little biographical information about the author whose catalog I'll be reading this year. Kazuo Ishiguro was born in Nagasaki in 1954 and moved to Surrey, England in 1960, where his father was invited to work for the British government at the National Institute of Oceanography. The family only expected to stay for 2 years, but his father's work continued to be supported by the British government. The storm surge machine the elder Ishiguro invented is part of the permanent exhibit at the Science Museum in London. Ishiguro graduated in 1978 from the University of Kent at Canterbury with a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature and Philosophy. In 1979, he was accepted for a Master of Arts course in creative writing run by the novelist and professor Malcolm Bradbury. Then, little-known author Angela Carter became his personal tutor. It was during this time that he began publishing short stories. His first novel was published in 1982, and after completing his creative writing MA, he became a full-time writer. He has since published 7 more novels, a short story collection, written 5 screenplays, and collaborated on the lyrics for a number of songs. An Artist of the Floating World, When We Were Orphans, and Never Let Me Go were shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and The Remains of the Day was awarded the prize in 1989. The Remains of the Day and Never Let Me Go have both been adapted to film, with the former nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. Film adaptations for A Pale View of Hills and Clara and the Sun are expected for later this year. Ishiguro received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2017 and received a knighthood from the United Kingdom and the Order of the Rising Sun Gold and Silver Star from Japan in 2018. I'll be reading Ishiguro's novels, which include A Pale View of Hills, An Artist of the Floating World, The Remains of the Day, The Unconsoled, When We Were Orphans, Never Let Me Go, The Buried Giant, and Clara and the Sun. I'll also read his short story collection, Nocturnes, 5 Stories of Music and Nightfall. I've previously read 3 of these, The Remains of the Day, Never Let Me Go, and Clara and the Sun, but the first 2 were a long time ago and they merit the rereading. I believe I have also read When We Were Orphans, but I don't remember anything about it, so it'll be like reading it for the first time for me again. Now, on to Ishiguro's first novel, A Pale View of Hills. In his quiet, restrained manner, Ishiguro tackles the changing culture of Japan following the devastation of World War II and the influence of American occupation. We initially meet Etsuko as her younger daughter Miki comes to visit her from Japan, joining her for the funeral of her elder daughter Keiko following her suicide. There is clearly tension between the two, but we don't fully understand the reason why. From this point, we're transported to a previous time in Etsuko's life, when she was living in Nagasaki, married to her first husband Jiro, and pregnant with Keiko. She is also receiving a visit from her father-in-law, Ogata. The worst days were over by then, Etsuko says, referring to the war. American soldiers were as numerous as ever, for there was fighting in Korea. But in Nagasaki, after what had gone before, those were the days of calm and relief. The world had a feeling of change about it. We also see Etsuko's memories of the aforementioned Sachiko, a woman who defiantly plans to move to the U.S. with her American suitor and take her young daughter Mariko with her. This despite that American suitor not seeming all that interested in Sachiko's plans. Mariko is an obstinate child, but Sachiko seems to easily dismiss her behavior in front of Etsuko. She eventually reveals some of the atrocities her daughter came across after the bombing of Nagasaki. The effects of the bomb loom large as American forces are just beginning to discuss leaving the country. And we learn bit by bit how it has affected the people who have lost loved ones and a way of life with its fall. We see this perhaps most evidently in Ogata, who is dismayed by the cultural changes brought by the Americans. He laments the lack of so-called loyalty, chastising a woman for daring to vote differently than her husband. He insists that women are headstrong, their minds filled with ideas and washing machines and American dresses. While Ogata's background and his work are not central to the story, he serves as a way to explore the cultural changes occurring in Japan at the time and the older generation's resistance to take in new political ideas. This theme is also present in Sachiko, but from the opposite point. In Sachiko, we see a woman who turns up her nose at expectations of her as a Japanese woman and does everything she can to do what she believes is right for her and her daughter. Etsuko doesn't seem to quite understand this during their friendship. She says, "You wouldn't think anything had ever happened here, would you?" she asks Sachiko. "Everything looks so full of life, but all that area down there," I waved my hand at the view below us. "All that area was so badly hit when the bomb fell. But look at it now." Despite this observation and this almost clinging to an optimistic view of the country and its future potential, we do know that Etsuko eventually leaves Japan and ends up in England, married to another man, with whom she has her second daughter, Nikki. The question becomes, what changed for Etsuko, and how did she end up with a life contrary to what she previously espoused? To say more about the story would be to reveal too much. Suffice it to say, the story incorporates a twist that is so subtle as to go almost undetected, but that gives Etsuko's memories of her relationship with Sachiko so much more weight than they initially did. This focus on Nagasaki in his first novel stems from Ishiguro's own upbringing in the famous city. In response to a question about understanding the historical significance of the city's name in an interview with Mark Lawson of the BBC, Ishiguro says he was 7 years old in primary school in England, 2 years after leaving Nagasaki, looking at a school encyclopedia. And he says, "I came across an entry and there was a mushroom cloud next to it. And I read the entry and it occurred to me with almost a strange sense of pride that the town I had come from was one of only 2 places in the whole of world history that had ever been struck by an atomic bomb. I realized that that's what Nagasaki stood for many people. It was the place where the atomic bomb fell. For me, that's not what Nagasaki was. Nagasaki was the place where I grew up. It was my kindergarten, my grandparents. That's what Nagasaki is for Etsuko. It's a home, a place whose changes she struggles to accept. Yet she eventually finds reason to leave this home, and this limbo between Japanese and English culture permeates her life and that of her daughter, Keiko. In 1982, a review published in the New York Times called A Pale View of Hills, a delicate, ironic, elliptical novel that means much more than it says. Etsuko has been a musician, and in her mind, themes and images echo and repeat in a contrapuntal arrangement of increasing power. Sachiko's failed motherhood resonates against Etsuko's. The 2 women mirror each other's ambivalence about having abandoned their accepted modes for Japanese wives and widows. The story, following its narrator's memory, begins after the bombing of Nagasaki, but that event lies at its center. Barely touched upon, mentioned only by innuendo, the destruction of Nagasaki appears as a vacuum, defined only by the misplaced lives and the disjointed modes of survival which derive from it. But in his book, where what is stated is often less important than what is left unsaid, those blanked out days around the bomb's explosion become the paradigm of modern life. They are the ultimate example of qualities which the novel celebrates: the brilliance of our negative invention and our infinite talent for living beyond annihilation, as if we had forgotten it. In 1982, the book won the Winifred Hotby Memorial Prize, presented by the Royal Society of Literature, for Best Regional Novel of the Year. As mentioned earlier, a film version of this novel is expected sometime this year, and I will definitely see it. For more information, check out the links in the description, although I wouldn't watch the BBC interview unless you've already read or seen Never Let Me Go, as it includes some spoilers for that story. The book is 183 pages, and I gave it 4 stars. Up next is An Artist of the Floating World, and I hope to have that review up soon. Have you read any of Ishiguro's work? Let me know in the comments and tell me what you thought of it. That's all from me today. I hope you read well.